I want you to imagine living in a city that has just been under heavy siege for so long, you've completely forgotten there was ever a war.
Oh, yeah.
Like you just walk around your neighborhood thinking that massive windowless concrete walls
Y-
and strict daily rationing and the constant wailing of warning sirens in the distance.
Just a normal Tuesday.
Right. You just think that's normal architecture. You don't even realize you were living in a literal fortress.
Because that intense vigilance just, it becomes your physiological baseline. You
Yeah.
completely forget what it feels like to just walk in an open, quiet field, purely because your entire reality, your whole nervous system is structured around defense, anticipating the next attack.
Which is exactly what we are doing to ourselves internally. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are tearing down what we're calling the fortress mind.
It's a big one today.
It is. We are exploring a profound text that radically reframes a deeply misunderstood concept, which is surrendering to the heart. And I know right away, the busy, strategic mind of anyone listening, your mind, my mind, is probably flashing red warning lights. Because we spend a massive amount of metabolic energy trying to keep ourselves safe, right? Trying to manage every possible outcome.
We do, and it is a deeply, deeply exhausting way to live.
So exhausting.
But the shift from that strategic protective ego to the intelligence of the heart is not it's not some lofty, unattainable philosophical ideal.
No.
It is a very tangible transition from a state of constant draining defense into a state of biological and psychological coherence.
And I am right there with you if you're feeling skeptical about that word surrender.
Oh, absolutely.
Because surrender usually sounds like waving a white flag, giving up to an overpowering force or just admitting defeat.
Weakness, yeah.
Exactly, weakness. But we need to look at this differently. Surrendering to the heart isn't passive. It isn't a form of weakness at all. It's actually a homecoming.
I love that word for it.
Right. It's a return to an underlying intelligence that has been operating quietly underneath all your frantic mental noise this entire time.
Yeah, we have completely corrupted the word surrender by associating it with collapse.
Mm-hmm.
But in mystical traditions across various cultures, the heart isn't just a metaphor for where your feelings live.
It's not a Valentine's Day card.
No, exactly. It certainly isn't about mere sentimentality. The text really emphasizes that the heart is the seat of non-dual awareness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because non-dual awareness can sound like a bit of a spiritual buzzword.
Sure.
What does that actually look like in practice?
So non-dual simply means not to.
Not to.
Right. It is the state where the strict, rigid division between you and the rest of the world begins to dissolve.
Like the boundary drops.
Yes. Because when you are operating from the intellect alone, you are fundamentally isolated. It's you versus everything else.
Right.
You have to constantly manage your environment, manipulate outcomes, defend against external threats. So to surrender to the heart is to surrender into a state of coherence where you stop fighting the fabric of reality. You stop treating the world as a host of separate objects to manage and realize you're a continuous part of it.
But while the heart has been locked away, the mind has been very, very busy.
Oh, it's been working overtime.
Right. Operating without the heart's coherence, the mind basically becomes an architect of fortresses. It builds these intricate stories about who you are. It builds thick defensive walls and massive justifications to keep you safe in a world that, at one point anyway, genuinely felt unsafe. But wait, let me push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
My mind's hypervigilance kept me alive when things were actually bad.
Yes, it did.
So if I open up, aren't I just firing my best bodyguard?
Yeah.
I mean, he's tackling the waiter at a dinner party now, sure, but he's just doing his job. He's to work in a war zone. How do I get him to stand down without leaving myself completely exposed to danger?
That is the perfect analogy, and the text is clear on this. You don't fire him, and you certainly don't shame the mind for doing its job.
Okay, so no shaming the bodyguard.
Right. The mind is a loyal soldier. The emotional armoring, the hypervigilance, the constant need to control every little outcome. Those strategies were highly adaptive responses to real exposure and real pain.
They worked.
They worked, but the war ended years ago, and the soldier is still frantically patrolling the perimeter, totally exhausting your resources.
Yeah.
You get the bodyguard to relax not by attacking him, but by offering a biological update.
A biological update, like a literal signal that the environment has changed.
Yes, exactly. The heart provides a felt sense of safety that is so deeply rooted, the fortress simply no longer needs to hold.
Wow.
It is an internal, undeniable signal that says, we are safe now. And this is a crucial distinction. We aren't saying thinking is bad.
Right. We still need to think.
We need the intellect to navigate the modern world. The difference is between thinking that happens inside an armored defensive posture versus thinking that occurs inside an open, coherent heart.
So the mind just rests.
Yes, when the heart opens, the overworked mind can finally rest.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, because we aren't just talking about a poetic metaphor here.
No, we're not.
There is an actual documented physiological reality to what happens when that mental noise quiets down. This isn't just a spiritual platitude. It is hardcore psychophysiology.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the heart acts as a master biological metronome, and the frantic, exhausted brain finally syncs up to its steady beat.
What's fascinating here is how the scientific measurements validate those ancient contemplative descriptions.
Yeah.
We are talking about literal, measurable shifts in the human organism. The heart actually generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond the physical body.
Several feet. That is wild.
It is, and it communicates directly with the brain through afferent nerve pathways.
By afferent pathways. So instead of the brain acting as the sole CEO, just barking orders down to the body, the signals are traveling from the heart to the brain.
Exactly, telling the brain what state to be in.
So the heart is the real CEO.
It is a literal processing center. In fact, more neural traffic flows from the heart to the brain than the other way around.
That blows my mind.
Right, and when the heart enters a coherent rolling rhythm, which happens when you shift into this state of surrender, it shoots a clear signal up those afferent pathways, directly engaging the vagus nerve.
Ah, the vagus nerve.
Yep. And that signal reaches the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, and essentially tells it to stand down.
Shutting off the cortisol drip.
Cortisol plummets. Brainwave patterns physically shift from erratic high beta stress waves into smoother, calmer alpha waves.
Incredible.
The whole nervous system downregulates. So the heart, in this context, is an organ actively changing your biological state.
But, before you ever hook yourself up to a lab monitor to see those alpha waves, the very first thing you experience in your body is just a profound quieting.
Yes.
The silence, the endless loops of anticipation, the rehearsing of arguments in the shower.
Oh, we all do that.
Right.
Yes.
Cataloging every possible thing that could go wrong tomorrow morning. It just loses its grip.
Because the anxious mind simply cannot follow the frequency that the coherent heart operates on.
Exactly. It's not silenced by sheer willpower. It just drops away.
Mm.
The text describes it as the felt sense of a weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
A massive weight you've been carrying for decades without even realizing it was there. Just the profound relief of no longer trying to hold your entire universe together through sheer mental effort.
And that relief is the first true gift of surrender. It isn't some grand booming revelation from the heavens or a sudden enlightenment.
Right?
It is just the sudden absence of the heavy lifting you've been doing since childhood.
Okay, but I have to stop us here. If this physiological shift is so incredibly good for us, if it shuts down cortisol and brings us into alpha waves, why is it so terrifying to actually do?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've tried this.
Yeah.
I sit down to meditate or intentionally, open my heart, and within 2 minutes, my brain is absolutely screaming at me about an email I forgot to send.
Yep.
Or replaying a weird comment a coworker made 3 years ago. It feels like a mistake. It is incredibly disorienting.
Which is arguably the hardest part of the entire process. And it is something a lot of purely positive, good vibes only teachings completely gloss over.
They skip right past it.
They do. When the internal structure you have lived inside your fortress suddenly becomes permeable, the mind goes into a panic state.
Because it's a structural collapse.
Right. You don't have your usual reference points. You don't have your usual heavy defenses to lean against.
It's completely counterintuitive. It's like taking off a heavy iron suit of armor you've worn for decades. You think the first thing you're going to feel is this glorious, light freedom. But the first thing you actually feel is just a freezing, painful breeze.
Mm-hmm.
You feel totally dangerously exposed.
And people so often misinterpret that intense discomfort. They think, well, I opened my heart, I felt terrible and vulnerable, therefore surrender is dangerous, and I need to close up again immediately to survive.
Right. I took the armor off, I got cold, armor goes back on forever.
Exactly. But we have to fundamentally reframe that discomfort.
How so?
That strange, sometimes painful feeling is not evidence of harm. It is evidence of expansion.
Oh, that's good.
Think about any muscle or connective tissue in the body that has been tightly constricted and frozen for years.
Okay.
When it finally begins to stretch and return to its natural full range of motion, it hurts. It feels alarming.
Yeah, it burns.
The heart's opening is mechanically identical. We have to recognize that the discomfort means the system is finally working again, not that it's breaking down.
And I think we have to be honest about what actually floods in during that
Yeah,
expansion.
they do.
Because it isn't pure joy right away, it's all the waiting feelings.
The backlog.
Yes, the backlog, the grief, the profound longing, the acute tenderness that feels almost unbearable. It's the heart finally processing the massive backlog of emotions that the fortress mind was too busy defending against to actually feel.
And that requires a tremendous amount of resilience. You are sitting with the reality of what it means to be human, entirely unfiltered by your usual protective strategies.
Which takes guts.
It does. You are feeling the full spectrum of your own inner weather without trying to change the forecast.
So what does this all mean? Let's assume I actually survive this freezing breeze of vulnerability.
Okay.
I sit with the backlog of grief. I don't put the armor back on. What actually changes in my day-to-day life? Am I just walking around feeling raw and exposed all the time, or is there an actual payoff?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, after the initial disorientation, your reality starts to reorganize itself around a fundamentally different center of gravity.
A different center of gravity.
Yes, because when you operate from the intellect alone, you are constantly calculating. You are strategizing your next move.
Always playing chess.
Right. But when decisions emerge from an integrated, coherent heart, they carry a distinct authority, an authority that a carefully constructed external ego simply cannot fake.
People can feel the difference.
People feel this shift in you instinctively. Situations naturally respond to it.
The text has this concept of the single frequency, and that really anchors this idea for me. Because the armored self is perpetually broadcasting mixed signals. It broadcasts contradiction. Like, you desperately want connection, but you project a massive wall of defense.
Right.
You want abundance, but you are emanating the panic, tight energy of scarcity. You want peace, but you radiate tension. You are basically confusing the environment around you.
When we are armored, we are constantly fighting ourselves, and the world reflects that friction right back to us.
The friction, exactly. But the coherent heart sends out a single, unified frequency. And sustaining that single frequency literally changes the field you move through. The friction you normally experience in your relationships, your career, your daily interactions, it begins to dissolve because you are no longer broadcasting internal warfare.
But, maintaining that single frequency challenges the traditional definition of surrender all over again.
How do you mean?
Well, surrender sounds like waving a white flag, but everything we are talking about describes it more like standing in a storm without an umbrella on purpose.
Yes. Yes. Doing this is the ultimate active state. It demands immense courage.
Right.
The courage to not turn away from your own internal weather. You have to hold your certainties very loosely. You have to be willing to be moved and changed by what you encounter rather than just relying on your old self-preservation tactics to steamroll through life.
And you need patience.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful image in the text of how this growth works. It happens invisibly, underground.
I love that part.
Like roots preparing for a flowering that the impatient, strategic surface mind can't even foresee yet.
Because the heart operates on a completely different timeline than the mind. The mind wants the destination right now. It wants the completed to-do list, the immediate security, the guaranteed outcome.
Give me the checklist.
Right. But the heart operates on the timeline of depth, maturation, and true readiness.
So let's look at what actually becomes available to you when you cross this threshold. The payoff. We are talking about genuine intimacy, because obviously the heavy walls you built to keep the bad out were also keeping the good out.
Absolutely.
They were keeping you from truly reaching anyone else.
And you also gain access to genuine creative flow.
Oh, that's huge.
It is, because the internal censor, that hypervigilant part of the mind that manages and judges every single thought before you even express it, it finally lifts.
Wow.
And you develop a deep intuitive knowing. The static of constant strategic thinking gets quiet enough that you can actually hear the subtler signals your body and your environment are sending you.
And maybe the biggest shift of all, you start experiencing yourself as a continuous part of the world, rather than something that has to be constantly defended against it.
Yes.
The text calls it love in its cosmological sense. Not just having an emotion toward a specific person, but experiencing a completely different texture of consciousness where you just aren't isolated anymore.
We must remember, though, this is not a one-time event.
Right.
You don't cross a finish line and suddenly you are surrendered forever.
Check the box.
Exactly, no box to check. It is an ongoing orientation. It is a daily, sometimes hourly return to that state of coherence.
Which brings us to the practice. How do we actually do this? It can be as simple as placing a hand on your chest and breathing intentionally slowly until you literally feel that mental tempo shift.
Yes.
Or pausing before a significant decision. Instead of immediately calculating the most strategically optimal move, you ask yourself what your deeper knowing says. You give that quiet intelligence the room to speak.
It also means the radical act of just feeling your feelings fully rather than trying to manage them into an acceptable, productive shape.
And then there's forgiveness. And I really want to spend a minute here because this completely blew my mind.
It's such a paradigm shift.
It is. Framing forgiveness not as some performance of spiritual superiority, but as a technology.
The technology, yes.
Let's unpack the mechanics of this. How does holding a grudge act as structural reinforcement for the fortress mind?
It is an incredible way to look at it. When you hold on to a grievance, you are actively burning metabolic and mental energy to keep a past event alive in the present moment.
Right.
You are maintaining the structural integrity of your internal walls. The mind says, I was hurt. I must remember this hurt perfectly, and I must build my identity around protecting this specific wound so it never happens again.
You're paying the electric bill for the fence.
Yes. You are paying a massive utility bill every single day to keep those electric fences powered.
So forgiveness isn't about letting someone else off the hook.
Not at all.
It's about literally freeing up your own internal resources. It's an engineering problem. You dissolve the story that justified the armoring in the first place. When you no longer need to be right about what hurt you, you no longer need to build your entire life around protecting that wound.
You resign from your post as the definitive narrator of your own past trauma.
Oof. That's powerful.
You stop funding the fortress. You trust that the heart's intelligence knows the way home, even when the strategic mind is terrified and wants to grab the steering wheel.
So we talked earlier about how the armored self broadcasts contradiction, right? Wanting connection, but projecting defense.
Yeah.
I want you to think about the signal you are broadcasting into the world right now. If forgiveness is simply a technology, if it is resigning from your post as the protector of your old wounds and shutting off the power to those electric fences, what could you build with all that leftover energy once the fortress comes down?